What if I told you that the reason your neck and shoulders hurt has almost nothing to do with your neck and shoulders? I know that sounds crazy, but stay with me, because this might completely change how you think about your pain. If you've tried stretching, massages, pain creams, even posture braces, and the pain keeps coming back, there's a reason for that. And once you understand it, relief finally starts to make sense. Most people think neck and shoulder pain comes from sleeping wrong, bad posture, or staring at a phone too long. And yes, those things can make it worse. But they're not the real cause. They're just the trigger. The real cause is much deeper, and it's happening all day long without you realizing it. Here's the truth. Your neck and shoulders are not designed to be strong, independent workers. They're designed to respond to what's happening in the rest of your body. When something else is off, they pay the price. Think of them like the warning lights on a car dashboard. The light isn't the problem. It's just telling you something else needs attention. One of the biggest hidden causes is chronic tension from stress. And I don't mean dramatic stress like big life events. I mean low-level, constant stress. The kind that comes from rushing, worrying, multitasking, and always being on. When your nervous system stays in fight or flight mode, your shoulders slowly creep upward and your neck muscles stay slightly contracted all day. You don't notice it because it becomes your normal. But muscles that never fully relax eventually become painful, stiff, and inflamed. Another major cause is how you breathe. This surprises a lot of people. When you breathe shallowly into your chest instead of deeply into your belly, your neck and shoulder muscles are forced to help with every single breath. Imagine doing thousands of tiny reps all day long without rest. Over time, those muscles become overworked and irritated. The pain isn't because they're weak. It's because they're doing a job they were never meant to do. Then there's the issue of movement, or more accurately, the lack of it. Your body thrives on variety, but most people move the same way every day. Sit, look forward, shoulders rounded, head slightly pushed out. Even if your posture looks okay, staying in one position for hours is a problem. Muscles get stuck in shortened or lengthened states, joints stop moving smoothly, and the neck and shoulders try to compensate. Pain shows up not because you moved wrong, but because you didn't move enough in different ways. Here's something else no one talks about. Weakness in areas far away from your neck can cause neck pain. If your upper back isn't doing its job, your shoulders and neck step in. If your core isn't supporting you, your neck muscles try to stabilize your posture. The neck becomes the hero that works overtime, and heroes eventually burn out. This is why quick fixes don't last. A massage might feel amazing, but if the underlying tension patterns don't change, the pain returns. Stretching helps temporarily, but if you stretch muscles that are already overworked, they tighten right back up. Painkillers numb the signal, but they don't address why the signal exists in the first place. So what actually helps? First, awareness. Start noticing when your shoulders creep up toward your ears. Notice how often you clench your jaw or hold your breath. These habits are silent, but powerful. Simply becoming aware of them starts to calm the nervous system. Second, slow your breathing. Deep, relaxed breaths into your belly tell your brain that you're safe. When your brain feels safe, your muscles let go. This alone can reduce tension more than most people realize. Third, move more, but gently and often. Your neck doesn't need aggressive cracking or forceful stretching. It needs frequent, easy movement. Turning, nodding, rolling the shoulders, opening the chest. Think of reminding your body that it's allowed to move again. And finally, strengthen what's supposed to support you. A strong upper back, stable shoulders, and engaged core take pressure off your neck. When the right muscles do their job, the neck can finally relax. Neck and shoulder pain is not your body betraying you. It's your body communicating with you. It's asking for less tension, better breathing, more movement, and smarter support. Once you stop fighting the pain and start listening to it, everything changes. If this made sense to you, and you've been dealing with neck or shoulder pain for a long time, you're not broken. You're just missing the full picture. And now you finally have it. Most people automatically assume that when their neck or shoulders hurt, the problem must be located exactly where the pain is felt. This belief is so common that it rarely gets questioned. You feel tightness at the base of your neck, so you rub your neck. Your shoulders ache, so you stretch your shoulders. It feels logical, and in the short term it often brings some relief, which reinforces the idea that you are treating the real issue. But pain does not always work that way. In fact, the body is much more interconnected than we are taught to believe, and pain is often a messenger rather than the source of the problem itself. The neck and shoulders sit at a crossroads in the body. They connect the head, spine, rib cage, arms, and nervous system. Because of this, they are extremely sensitive to imbalances happening elsewhere. When something below them isn't working properly, they often step in to help. Over time, this extra work builds tension and discomfort, and the pain shows up where the overload happens, not where the original problem started. One of the biggest misunderstandings about pain is the idea that location equals cause. Just because pain appears in one area does not mean that area is damaged or dysfunctional on its own. The neck and shoulders are especially prone to this confusion because they are involved in so many daily tasks. They help stabilize your head, assist with breathing, support arm movement, and respond instantly to stress and emotion. When the body is under strain, these muscles are often the first to react. Think about how your body responds to stress without you consciously choosing it. Your shoulders lift slightly, your neck stiffens, your jaw tightens. This happens automatically as part of a protective response. If that response becomes constant, the neck and shoulders remain partially contracted for hours or even days at a time. The pain that develops is not because the neck is weak or broken, but because it has been acting as a shield for the rest of the body. Another reason the neck and shoulders take the blame is because they are highly mobile areas with many small muscles and nerves. These tissues are excellent at signaling discomfort. When something is off elsewhere, such as in breathing patterns, spinal stability, or overall movement habits, the neck often becomes the alarm system. It sends pain signals to get your attention. Treating the neck alone is like silencing an alarm without checking why it went off in the first place. Breathing is a powerful example of this connection. When breathing becomes shallow and centered in the chest, instead of deep in the belly, the neck and shoulder muscles assist with lifting the ribcage. Over time, they become overworked. The pain that develops feels like a neck problem, but the root issue lies in how the diaphragm and ribcage are functioning. Until breathing patterns change, the neck continues to be overloaded. Posture also plays a role, but not in the way most people think. It's not about sitting perfectly upright all day. It's about balance and support. If the upper back is stiff or weak, the neck compensates by holding the head in position. If the core isn't providing stability, the neck muscles step in to help maintain alignment. The neck ends up doing work that should be shared across the body. Again, the pain appears in the neck, but the cause exists elsewhere. Movement patterns are another hidden contributor. The human body thrives on variety, yet modern life encourages repetition. Sitting, looking forward, typing, scrolling, driving. The neck and shoulders are constantly involved in these actions. If the hips, spine, and shoulders don't move freely, the neck adapts by becoming rigid to create a sense of stability. Over time, this rigidity turns into discomfort and pain. This misunderstanding leads many people into a frustrating cycle. They stretch their neck multiple times a day, roll their shoulders, get massages, or use heat packs. These approaches can feel good, but the relief is temporary because the underlying reason the neck is tense hasn't changed. The neck is still compensating, still protecting, still overworking. The pain keeps returning, which makes people believe their neck is fragile or damaged. In reality, the neck is often strong and capable. It just isn't meant to carry the burden of the entire body. When it does, it protests. Pain becomes a form of communication rather than a sign of failure. The body is essentially saying that something else needs support, movement, or attention. Understanding this shift in perspective can be incredibly freeing. Instead of constantly focusing on the painful area, you begin to look at the whole system. You notice how you breathe, how you move, how you respond to stress, and how different parts of your body share responsibility. When those systems improve, the neck no longer has to work overtime, and the pain often fades without being directly targeted. This is why people are often surprised when their neck pain improves after working on their upper back, breathing, or core strength. It feels almost magical, but it's simply the body returning to balance. The neck stops compensating because it no longer has to. The pain wasn't lying to you. It was pointing you in the right direction all along. When you stop seeing neck and shoulder pain as an isolated problem, everything changes. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with my neck?" you begin asking, "What is my neck responding to?" That question opens the door to lasting relief, because it addresses the true cause rather than chasing symptoms that were never meant to be treated alone. One of the most frustrating experiences for anyone dealing with ongoing neck and shoulder pain is doing everything they're told should work, only to find themselves right back where they started. You stretch daily, adjust your posture, get massages, maybe even see multiple professionals, and yet the pain keeps returning. This leads many people to believe that their body is stubborn, damaged, or somehow beyond help. But the real issue is not a lack of effort or discipline. It's that most common fixes are designed to chase symptoms instead of addressing the true root of the problem. Quick fixes are appealing because they promise fast relief. When your neck is tight, stretching it feels logical. When your shoulders ache, massaging them brings immediate comfort. Painkillers reduce discomfort enough to get through the day. The problem is that these methods are reactive. They respond to pain after it appears rather than preventing it from returning. As soon as the effect wears off, the body returns to the same patterns that created the pain in the first place. Stretching is a perfect example. While stretching can be helpful in certain situations, many people stretch muscles that are already overworked and fatigued. A muscle that feels tight isn't always short. Often it's tense because it's been working too hard for too long. Stretching such a muscle might temporarily reduce sensation, but it doesn't reduce the workload. Once the stretch ends, the muscle tightens again because it still has to compensate for weaknesses or imbalances elsewhere in the body. Massage works in a similar way. It relaxes tissue and improves blood flow, which feels amazing. But unless the underlying cause of tension changes, the muscles return to their previous state. This is why people often say, "The massage helped, but the pain came back a few days later." The massage wasn't wrong. It was just incomplete. It addressed the effect, not the cause. Posture correction is another commonly misunderstood solution. Many people are told to sit up straight, pull their shoulders back, and keep their head aligned. While posture awareness can be useful, forcing yourself into a rigid position often creates more tension. Holding perfect posture requires constant muscular effort, and guess which muscles end up doing most of that work? The neck and shoulders. This turns posture correction into another source of strain rather than a solution. Braces, supports, and ergonomic tools can also fall into this trap. They can be helpful temporarily, especially during recovery, but relying on them long-term teaches the body to depend on external support instead of building internal stability. When the support is removed, the body hasn't learned how to manage itself, and the pain returns. Another reason quick fixes fail is that they often ignore the nervous system. Pain is not just a physical issue, it's also neurological. If your nervous system is constantly on high alert due to stress, lack of rest, or mental overload, your muscles stay guarded. No amount of stretching or massaging can fully relax a body that doesn't feel safe. This is why pain often flares during stressful periods, even if nothing physically changed. Many fixes also fail because they focus too narrowly. The body doesn't operate in isolated parts, but treatment often does. You go to someone for your neck, someone else for your shoulders, someone else for your back. Each area is treated separately, but the pattern connecting them remains untouched. The neck and shoulders continue to compensate for whatever isn't functioning well, and the cycle continues. There's also the issue of consistency and context. Doing a few stretches in the morning doesn't undo 8 hours of static posture, shallow breathing, and mental tension. Relief methods are often brief, while the habits causing the pain are constant. The body will always respond more strongly to what you do most of the time, not what you do occasionally. This can lead to discouragement. People start to think that pain relief is temporary by nature, or that their condition is chronic and unavoidable. In reality, the pain is persistent because the strategy being used is incomplete. It's like mopping up water without fixing the leak. You can keep cleaning the floor, but it will never stay dry until the source is addressed. Lasting relief comes from changing the conditions that create pain. That means improving how the body moves throughout the day, not just during exercise or treatment. It means calming the nervous system, supporting proper breathing, building strength where it's lacking, and allowing movement variety. When these foundational elements improve, the neck and shoulders no longer have to work overtime. When the right muscles do their job, the overworked ones finally get a break. When the nervous system feels safe, muscles stop bracing unnecessarily. When movement becomes more balanced, strain is distributed evenly instead of piling up in one area. This is why addressing root causes works when quick fixes fail. Understanding this doesn't mean you should never stretch, massage, or adjust posture. These tools still have value, but they should be part of a bigger picture, not the entire plan. When you stop expecting temporary solutions to create permanent change, you stop being disappointed by them. Pain is not a stubborn enemy refusing to go away. It's a signal asking for a different approach. When you listen to that signal instead of silencing it, relief stops being temporary and starts becoming lasting. One of the most overlooked reasons neck and shoulder pain becomes chronic is constant low-level stress that never fully switches off. This isn't the kind of stress people usually think about, like a sudden shock or a major life crisis. It's quieter than that. It's the background noise of modern life. Deadlines, notifications, responsibilities, expectations, worrying about the future, replaying conversations in your head. None of it feels dramatic enough to blame for physical pain, yet it slowly reshapes how your body holds itself every single day. When your brain perceives stress, even mild stress, it sends signals through the nervous system to prepare your body for action. This response is automatic and deeply wired into human survival. Muscles tighten slightly, breathing becomes quicker and shallower, and the body shifts into a protective state. The shoulders subtly lift, the neck stiffens, and the jaw clenches. You don't choose this reaction, and most of the time you don't even notice it happening. The problem isn't that this response exists. It's that for many people, it never fully turns off. The body stays in a semi-alert state from morning until night. You might feel calm mentally, but your nervous system is still operating as if something needs to be guarded against. Over hours, days, and months, that constant muscle tension becomes your baseline. The neck and shoulders, being highly responsive areas, take the brunt of it. Unlike muscles used for big movements like walking or lifting, neck and shoulder muscles are often engaged in subtle, sustained contractions. They don't get obvious breaks. When stress keeps them slightly activated all day, they never fully relax. Blood flow becomes restricted, waste products build up in the tissue, and nerves become more sensitive. Pain develops not because of injury, but because the muscles are exhausted from never being allowed to switch off. This is why people often say their pain is worse at the end of the day, even if they didn't do anything physically demanding. The pain isn't caused by one bad movement. It's the result of accumulated tension. Every email, every task, every moment of mental pressure adds a tiny bit more load. Eventually, the neck and shoulders reach a threshold where discomfort turns into pain. What makes this even more challenging is that stress-related tension feels normal. If you've been holding your shoulders slightly raised for years, it doesn't feel tense anymore. It just feels like how your body is. When someone tells you to relax your shoulders, you might not even know how, because relaxed muscles feel unfamiliar. This is why stress-related pain can be so persistent and confusing. Another important piece is how stress changes breathing. Under stress, breathing shifts higher into the chest. The diaphragm becomes less active, and the neck and shoulder muscles step in to help lift the ribcage. This means that every breath reinforces neck and shoulder tension. Thousands of breaths per day become thousands of small repetitions for muscles that are already overworked. The pain builds quietly, without any clear moment where you can say it started. Stress also affects how the brain processes pain. A nervous system that is constantly alert becomes more sensitive to sensation. Signals that might normally be ignored get amplified. Mild stiffness feels uncomfortable. Discomfort feels painful. Pain feels alarming. This doesn't mean the pain is imagined. It means the nervous system is on high volume. The neck and shoulders, packed with nerves and sensory receptors, become prime areas for this amplified experience. This explains why neck and shoulder pain often appears or worsens during stressful periods, even when physical activity decreases. Someone might take time off work, rest more, or stop exercising, yet their pain doesn't improve. In some cases, it even gets worse. The stress response hasn't changed, so the muscle tension remains. It also explains why pain relief techniques that only target the muscles often fall short. You can stretch, massage, and apply heat, but if stress continues to signal the muscles to stay guarded, they tighten right back up. The body is simply following instructions from the nervous system. Until those instructions change, the muscles stay on duty. Chronic stress doesn't always feel like anxiety. Sometimes it feels like being busy, responsible, or productive. Sometimes it feels like being tired but wired. The body doesn't differentiate between emotional stress, mental stress, or physical stress. It responds to all of it in the same protective way. The neck and shoulders don't know whether tension comes from a heavy workload or emotional pressure. They just respond. This is why addressing stress-related neck and shoulder pain requires more than physical solutions. It requires creating moments where the nervous system can downshift. Slow breathing, pauses during the day, gentle movement, and awareness of body tension all help signal safety. When the brain senses safety, muscles release naturally without being forced. Even small changes matter. Taking a few deep breaths, letting the shoulders drop, unclenching the jaw, or simply noticing tension can interrupt the stress-tension cycle. Over time, these interruptions add up. The baseline level of muscle tension decreases. Blood flow improves. Nerves become less reactive. Pain begins to ease not because it was attacked directly, but because the environment that created it no longer exists in the same way. Neck and shoulder pain linked to chronic stress isn't a sign of weakness or poor posture. It's a sign of a body that has been trying to protect you for too long without rest. When you understand this, the pain starts to make sense, and instead of fighting your body, you begin working with it. When the nervous system gets stuck in fight or flight, the body behaves as if danger is always nearby, even when nothing threatening is actually happening. This state was designed to be temporary, a short burst of heightened awareness to help humans survive immediate threats. The problem is that modern life creates constant signals that keep this system switched on. Emails, deadlines, noise, pressure, lack of rest, and emotional strain all tell the brain that it needs to stay alert. Over time, this constant alertness becomes the default setting, and the body forgets how to truly relax. In a fight or flight state, the brain prioritizes survival over comfort. Muscles tense to protect vital areas, reaction time increases, and breathing becomes fast and shallow. The neck and shoulders are particularly affected because they guard the head, which the brain sees as critical. These muscles tighten instinctively to shield the spine and skull. When this happens occasionally, the body recovers quickly. When it happens all day, every day, tension becomes permanent. This constant muscle guarding doesn't feel dramatic. It feels subtle, like a slight stiffness or heaviness that's easy to ignore at first. But over time, muscles that are always partially contracted lose their ability to fully relax. Blood flow becomes limited, oxygen delivery decreases, and waste products build up in the tissue. Nerves passing through these tight areas become irritated. Pain slowly emerges, not from injury, but from exhaustion and overload. The fight or flight response also changes how the brain interprets sensation. In this mode, the nervous system is scanning for threats. It becomes hyper-aware of bodily signals. Sensations that might normally be filtered out become noticeable. Tightness turns into discomfort. Discomfort turns into pain. Pain turns into concern. This creates a feedback loop where pain itself becomes another stressor, keeping the nervous system activated. One of the most challenging aspects of this state is that people often don't realize they're in it. They might not feel anxious or panicked. They might feel focused, driven, or simply busy. The nervous system doesn't need emotional distress to activate fight or flight. It responds to perception, not logic. If the brain believes constant vigilance is required, the body complies. Sleep plays a major role here. When the nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, deep restorative sleep becomes harder to achieve. Without proper rest, the body never fully resets. Muscles remain tense, stress hormones stay elevated, and pain sensitivity increases. Neck and shoulder pain often worsens in the morning not because of sleeping position, but because the body didn't truly rest overnight. Another important factor is how fight or flight affects breathing. breathing becomes shallow and rapid, centered in the chest. This limits the diaphragm's movement and forces accessory muscles in the neck and shoulders to assist with breathing. Every breath reinforces tension in these areas. Over thousands of breaths per day, this pattern becomes deeply ingrained. Even when you try to relax, the body continues breathing in a way that supports tension rather than release. Movement is also affected. In a heightened nervous system state, movement becomes more rigid and guarded. The body avoids fluid motion and prefers stability. The neck and shoulders often stiffen to create a sense of control. While this might feel protective, it reduces mobility and increases strain. Muscles that don't move through their full range lose elasticity and resilience, making them more prone to pain. This is why purely mechanical solutions often fail for chronic neck and shoulder pain. You can strengthen muscles, stretch tight areas, and improve posture, but if the nervous system remains on high alert, muscles will continue to guard. The body doesn't care how strong or flexible you are if it doesn't feel safe. Safety is the primary requirement for relaxation. Breaking out of fight or flight isn't about forcing relaxation. Telling yourself to calm down rarely works. The nervous system responds to signals, not commands. Slow breathing, gentle movement, and sensory cues like warmth and stillness send messages of safety. Over time, these signals teach the nervous system that it no longer needs to stay alert. Awareness plays a powerful role. Simply noticing when your shoulders are raised or your jaw is clenched can create a moment of choice. That moment interrupts the automatic stress response. With repetition, the body learns a new baseline. Tension decreases not because it was fought against, but because it was no longer needed. This shift takes patience. A nervous system that has been in fight or flight for years doesn't change overnight. But it does change with consistency. As the system calms, muscle tone normalizes, breathing deepens, and pain sensitivity decreases. The neck and shoulders, no longer acting as guards, finally get permission to relax. Neck and shoulder pain rooted in a stuck fight or flight response isn't a sign that something is broken. It's evidence of a body that has been trying to protect you nonstop. When you address the nervous system, you address the foundation of the pain, and everything built on top of it begins to change. Many people are shocked when they learn that the way they breathe can be a major contributor to neck and shoulder pain. Breathing seems automatic and harmless, something we do without thinking from the moment we're born. Because of that, it's rarely questioned. Yet breathing patterns can quietly place enormous strain on certain muscles, especially when those patterns shift away from how the body was designed to function. In a relaxed, efficient state, breathing is driven primarily by the diaphragm. The belly gently expands on the inhale, the rib cage moves naturally, and the neck and shoulders remain relatively relaxed. This type of breathing distributes the workload evenly and supports posture, circulation, and nervous system balance. But when breathing becomes shallow and chest-based, the body recruits extra muscles to help pull air in. These extra muscles live in the neck, shoulders, and upper chest. They were never meant to be primary breathing muscles. Their job is to assist only when demand is high, such as during intense physical activity. When shallow breathing becomes the norm, these muscles are called into action with every breath. That means they are working all day long without rest. This overuse creates a specific kind of tension. It's not the sharp pain of an injury. It's a deep, aching tightness that builds gradually. The muscles feel stiff, heavy, and sometimes sore to the touch. Because breathing happens constantly, the strain is constant too. There is no clear starting point, which makes it hard to connect the pain to breathing in the first place. Shallow breathing is often linked to stress, poor posture, and long hours of sitting. When the body is under stress, breathing naturally shifts higher into the chest as part of the fight or flight response. When sitting for long periods, especially in a slouched position, the diaphragm's movement is restricted, making belly breathing more difficult. Over time, chest breathing becomes automatic, even when the original stressor is gone. Every shallow breath slightly lifts the rib cage and shoulders. You may not see your shoulders visibly rising, but the muscles are still engaging. Thousands of times a day, the neck and shoulder muscles contract just enough to help move air. Individually, each contraction is small. Collectively, they add up to fatigue, irritation, and pain. This is why neck and shoulder pain often feels worse during periods of stress or fatigue. When you're tired, breathing becomes even shallower. When you're stressed, the breath shortens further. The muscles never get a break. Even during sleep, poor breathing patterns can persist, preventing full recovery. Another layer to this problem is that shallow breathing reduces oxygen efficiency. When breathing is rapid and shallow, the body doesn't use oxygen as effectively. This can increase feelings of tension and alertness, further activating the nervous system. The result is a loop where poor breathing increases tension, and increased tension worsens breathing. People often try to fix this pain by stretching the neck or rolling the shoulders, but the relief is short-lived. As soon as breathing patterns return to normal, the tension comes back. It's like trying to dry a floor while a tap is still running. The muscles are being reloaded with every breath. What makes this even trickier is that shallow breathing feels normal to many people. If you've been breathing this way for years, deep belly breathing can feel uncomfortable or unnatural at first. Some people even feel anxious when they slow their breath, because their nervous system is used to constant stimulation. This doesn't mean deep breathing is wrong. It means the body has adapted to stress. Relearning efficient breathing doesn't require force. It's about awareness and patience. Simply noticing where the breath goes is the first step. When the breath starts to move lower into the belly and the rib cage expands gently, the neck and shoulders no longer need to assist as much. Over time, their workload decreases. As breathing improves, something interesting happens. The shoulders start to feel lighter. The neck becomes less stiff. Tension that once seemed permanent begins to fade. This happens not because the muscles were directly manipulated, but because they were finally allowed to rest. Breathing also sends powerful signals to the nervous system. Slow, deep breaths activate the part of the nervous system responsible for relaxation and recovery. When this system is engaged, muscle tone naturally decreases. The body shifts out of protective mode. Pain sensitivity lowers. Healing becomes possible. This is why addressing breathing can be more effective than hours of stretching or massage. It works at the source of the problem, rather than chasing symptoms. When breathing supports the body instead of stressing it, the neck and shoulders no longer have to compensate. Neck and shoulder pain caused by shallow breathing isn't a sign that something is wrong with your muscles. It's a sign that they've been doing extra work for a long time. When breathing returns to its natural rhythm, those muscles finally get permission to relax, and pain begins to ease in a way that feels almost effortless. Poor breathing patterns contribute to ongoing pain and stiffness in a way that is so quiet and gradual most people never connect the two. Breathing happens in the background of everything you do, so it rarely gets attention unless something feels obviously wrong. Yet the way you breathe shapes how your muscles behave, how your nervous system responds, and how tension spreads through your body over time. When breathing patterns are inefficient, the effects don't show up immediately. They accumulate slowly, turning into stiffness that feels mysterious and pain that seems to have no clear cause. One of the reasons breathing patterns are so influential is because they never stop. You can choose when to exercise, stretch, or rest, but you cannot choose whether to breathe. That makes breathing one of the most powerful physical habits you have. If that habit places extra strain on certain muscles, those muscles are being stressed constantly, without recovery. Over time, this leads to chronic tightness rather than temporary soreness. Shallow breathing, breath holding, and irregular breathing rhythms are especially common in modern life. Many people unconsciously hold their breath while concentrating, scrolling, driving, or dealing with stress. Others breathe quickly and shallowly, barely moving the rib cage or abdomen. These patterns limit the natural movement of the diaphragm and shift the workload upward into the neck and shoulders. When the diaphragm doesn't move fully, the body still needs air, so it compensates. Muscles around the neck, collarbones, and shoulders step in to lift the rib cage. These muscles were designed for assistance, not leadership. When they are recruited constantly, they begin to tighten and fatigue. The stiffness that develops doesn't feel like overuse in the traditional sense, because it's not tied to exercise or effort. It feels like something is just stuck. This stiffness affects more than just muscle tissue. Tight muscles restrict joint movement and compress nearby nerves and blood vessels. Reduced blood flow means less oxygen and fewer nutrients reach the tissue, slowing recovery. Nerves become more sensitive in compressed areas, increasing pain perception. What started as a breathing pattern quietly turns into a mechanical and neurological issue. Poor breathing also changes how the spine and rib cage move. The rib cage is meant to expand and contract with each breath. When that movement is limited, the upper spine becomes stiff. The neck then compensates for the lack of mobility below it. Increased neck movement paired with constant muscle tension is a recipe for discomfort. The pain shows up in the neck, but the restriction started in the breath. Another overlooked aspect is how breathing patterns influence muscle tone throughout the body. Fast, shallow breathing keeps the nervous system in a more alert state. This increases baseline muscle tension. Muscles don't fully relax between movements. Over time, this creates a feeling of constant tightness, even during rest. The body never fully resets. This is why stiffness often feels worse in the morning or after long periods of inactivity. Poor breathing during sleep or prolonged sitting prevents muscles from recovering. The body wakes up already tense. People assume they slept wrong or need a new pillow, not realizing their breathing never allowed true relaxation. Attempts to loosen stiff muscles without addressing breathing often fail. Stretching a muscle that is being tightened repeatedly by breathing patterns provides temporary relief at best. As soon as normal breathing resumes, the muscle tightens again. This cycle creates frustration and confusion, making pain feel unpredictable and uncontrollable. What makes poor breathing patterns especially tricky is how normal they feel. If you've been breathing shallowly for years, deeper breathing can feel strange or uncomfortable. Some people even feel lightheaded or anxious when they try to breathe more fully, not because it's harmful, but because their nervous system isn't used to it. The body interprets change as unfamiliar, even when the change is beneficial. This unfamiliarity often leads people to abandon breathing-focused approaches too quickly. They assume it's not working or that their pain must have a different cause. In reality, breathing patterns take time to retrain because they are deeply ingrained habits. Just like posture or movement patterns, they change gradually with awareness and repetition. As breathing becomes more efficient, stiffness begins to ease in subtle ways. Movements feel smoother. The neck turns more freely. The shoulders feel less heavy. These changes often happen without dramatic interventions. Muscles relax because they no longer need to assist with every breath. The body redistributes effort more evenly. Breathing also influences how safe the body feels. Slow, steady breathing tells the nervous system that there is no immediate threat. When the nervous system receives that message consistently, muscle tone decreases naturally. This creates a window for healing that stretching and strengthening alone cannot provide. Ongoing pain and stiffness are rarely the result of one single factor. They are the product of patterns repeated day after day. Poor breathing patterns are one of the most powerful patterns because they operate constantly and silently. When they are overlooked, pain persists despite best efforts. When they are addressed, the body often responds faster than expected, tension melts away, and stiffness that once felt permanent begins to loosen in a way that feels natural and sustainable. Most people believe that neck and shoulder pain comes from having bad posture, and while posture does play a role, the bigger issue is how long the body stays in one position. The human body was built to move frequently and in many different ways, yet modern life encourages long periods of stillness. Sitting at a desk, driving, looking at a screen, standing in line, or even relaxing on the couch often involve holding the same posture for extended periods. Even if that posture looks correct, staying there too long creates strain. When the body remains in one position, certain muscles stay shortened while others stay lengthened. Neither group gets a chance to reset. Over time, this imbalance creates tension and fatigue. The neck and shoulders are especially vulnerable because they are responsible for holding the head upright. The head is relatively heavy, and supporting it requires constant muscular effort. When movement is limited, the same muscles carry that load continuously. Static positions reduce circulation. Muscles rely on blood flow to receive oxygen and nutrients and to remove waste products. When a muscle stays contracted or stretched for too long, blood flow is restricted. Waste builds up in the tissue, increasing sensitivity and discomfort. This process doesn't require poor posture. It happens even in positions that are considered ideal. This is why people can have excellent posture and still experience pain. Holding a perfectly upright position for hours demands constant muscle activation. The body prefers variety, not perfection. Small shifts, weight changes, and movements allow muscles to alternate between work and rest. Without those changes, fatigue sets in. Neck and shoulder pain often develops gradually in these situations. There is no single moment of injury. Instead, there is a slow accumulation of strain. The body adapts by increasing muscle tone to create stability. Over time, this increased tone becomes stiffness. Stiffness becomes discomfort. Discomfort becomes pain. Screens play a major role in this pattern. When focusing on a screen, people tend to reduce movement. The head stays oriented forward, the shoulders remain in a fixed position, and the upper back becomes rigid. Even micro-movements decrease. The neck and shoulders are forced to maintain the same relationship to gravity for long periods, increasing load. The problem is not just sitting. Standing still for long periods can have the same effect. Any position held without variation leads to the same outcome. The body doesn't care whether the posture is good or bad. It cares whether it gets to move. Lack of movement also affects joint health. Joints depend on movement to circulate fluid that nourishes cartilage and keeps surfaces moving smoothly. When joints don't move, they stiffen. In the upper spine and shoulders, this stiffness shifts more work to surrounding muscles. The neck often compensates for reduced mobility below it, increasing strain. Many people try to solve this by finding the perfect chair, desk setup, or pillow. While ergonomics can help reduce extremes, they don't eliminate the need for movement. No setup is good enough to replace regular position changes. Comfort becomes a problem when it encourages stillness. This is why pain often shows up after long workdays or extended screen time. It's not because something went wrong in one moment. It's because the body spent too long doing too little. Muscles that were meant to move rhythmically were forced to hold steady. They responded by tightening. Breaking this pattern doesn't require drastic changes. It requires permission to move. Small adjustments, frequent posture changes, standing up, turning the head, rolling the shoulders, and shifting weight all help restore circulation and reset muscle tone. These movements don't need to be intense or perfectly executed. They just need to happen often. When movement becomes part of the day, the neck and shoulders stop acting as static supports and return to their natural dynamic role. Muscles that were constantly working get a chance to rest. Joints regain their mobility. The sense of stiffness begins to fade. This shift also changes how the body experiences posture. Instead of trying to hold an ideal position, posture becomes something that adapts fluidly. The body finds balance through motion rather than rigidity. This is far less stressful and far more sustainable. Neck and shoulder pain caused by prolonged stillness isn't a sign of damage or weakness. It's a signal that the body needs movement. When movement is restored, pain often decreases without aggressive treatment because the body finally gets what it was designed for in the first place. The neck and shoulders often end up carrying extra strain not because they are weak or damaged, but because they are forced to compensate for a lack of movement elsewhere in the body. When certain areas stop moving well, other areas have to pick up the slack. This compensation happens automatically, without conscious effort, and over time it leads to pain. The neck and shoulders are especially vulnerable because they sit at the top of the movement chain and are involved in almost every action you take. The body is designed to move as a coordinated system. When you turn, reach, look around, or change position, movement should be shared across multiple joints and muscles. The spine, rib cage, shoulders, hips, and even the feet all contribute. But modern habits reduce movement variety. Sitting for long hours, repeating the same tasks, and limiting activity cause certain joints to become stiff and underused. When the upper back and rib cage don't move freely, the neck is forced to move more. If the shoulders lack mobility, the neck again steps in to help create the movement you need. Over time, this extra motion combined with constant tension leads to irritation. The neck becomes overworked, not because it's faulty, but because it's doing more than its share. This compensation pattern isn't always obvious. you may not feel stiff anywhere except your neck and shoulders. That's because those areas are paying the price for restrictions elsewhere. The body often sacrifices comfort in one area to maintain function overall. Pain becomes the cost of that strategy. Limited movement also reduces the body's ability to absorb forces. When movement is shared across joints, forces are distributed evenly. When movement is restricted, forces concentrate in fewer areas. The neck and shoulders end up absorbing more load, especially during everyday activities like looking down, lifting objects, or even breathing. Another important factor is how movement variety supports tissue health. Muscles and joints thrive on different angles, speeds, and ranges of motion. When movement becomes repetitive and limited, tissues lose adaptability. They become less resilient and more sensitive. The neck and shoulders, being highly mobile regions, feel this loss quickly. Lack of movement also affects coordination. When joints stop moving regularly, the brain reduces its awareness of those areas. This changes how movement is controlled. The neck and shoulders may become dominant movers because the brain relies on areas it senses most clearly. This dominance increases their workload even further. This is why people who are very active in limited ways can still experience neck and shoulder pain. Repeating the same exercises or movements without variety can create the same compensations as inactivity. The body doesn't just need movement. It needs diverse movement. Attempts to fix neck pain by focusing only on the neck often miss this bigger picture. Stretching or strengthening the neck might help temporarily, but if the surrounding areas remain stiff, the neck continues to compensate. Relief doesn't last because the workload hasn't changed. Restoring movement variety doesn't require extreme flexibility or athletic ability. It requires gentle exploration of different positions and ranges. Twisting, reaching, bending, and rotating through comfortable ranges reintroduce options to the body. When more options exist, the neck doesn't have to do everything. As movement returns to the upper back and shoulders, the neck naturally reduces its effort. Muscles that were constantly engaged can finally relax. The feeling of heaviness and tightness begins to fade. This often happens gradually and quietly, without dramatic interventions. Movement variety also improves circulation and nervous system input. Fresh blood flow nourishes tissues, while varied sensory input keeps the brain engaged and responsive. This reduces stiffness and pain sensitivity. The key is consistency rather than intensity. Small movements performed often are more effective than occasional intense sessions. The body responds to what it experiences regularly. When movement variety becomes part of daily life, compensation patterns change. Neck and shoulder pain caused by lack of movement variety is not a failure of the body. It's a predictable response to limited options. When the body is given more ways to move, it distributes effort more evenly, and pain decreases as a natural result. Neck pain often feels like a problem that starts and ends in the neck, but in many cases the neck is simply responding to a lack of support from other parts of the body. When areas that are meant to provide stability and strength aren't doing their job, the neck steps in to help. Over time, this extra responsibility leads to tension, fatigue, and pain. The neck becomes overworked not because it is weak, but because it is compensating for weaknesses elsewhere. One of the most important supporting areas for the neck is the upper back. The upper back is designed to create a stable base for the shoulders and head. When it is strong and mobile, it distributes load efficiently and allows the neck to move freely without strain. But when the upper back is weak, stiff, or underused, the neck muscles take on more of the work of holding the head upright and controlling movement. Modern habits contribute heavily to this imbalance. Long hours of sitting, especially with the arms in front of the body, reduce upper back engagement. Over time, the muscles that should support posture and shoulder position lose strength and endurance. The shoulders drift forward, the upper back rounds slightly, and the neck moves forward to keep the eyes level. This shift increases the load on the neck, forcing it to work harder just to maintain basic alignment. The core also plays a critical role in supporting the neck, even though it feels far away. The core provides stability for the spine as a whole. When the core is weak or inactive, the body searches for stability elsewhere. The neck, being highly sensitive and responsive, often becomes a stabilizer of last resort. This means neck muscles stay active even during simple tasks like sitting or standing. This constant low-level activation is exhausting. Muscles are meant to contract and relax. When they are asked to hold tension for long periods, blood flow decreases and fatigue builds. The neck begins to feel tight and sore, even without obvious strain. Pain develops gradually, often without a clear trigger. Weakness doesn't always mean a lack of strength. It can also mean poor endurance or coordination. Muscles might be strong enough for short efforts but unable to sustain low-level support throughout the day. When support fades, the neck compensates. This is why pain often increases as the day goes on. Supporting muscles fatigue, and the neck picks up the slack. Another layer to this problem is how the brain organizes movement. The nervous system prefers efficiency. If certain muscles are easier to activate than others, the brain will rely on them more. If the neck muscles are always ready to engage, they become the default stabilizers. Over time, this pattern becomes ingrained, even if the supporting muscles become stronger later on. This explains why some people continue to experience neck pain even after strengthening exercises. If movement patterns don't change, the neck remains overactive. The body doesn't automatically redistribute workload just because strength improves. It needs time and repetition to learn new patterns. Addressing this issue requires shifting support back to where it belongs. When the upper back becomes more active, the shoulders have a stable base. When the core engages appropriately, the spine feels supported. The neck no longer needs to brace constantly. It can move with less effort and less tension. This shift often brings surprising relief. People notice that their neck feels lighter, their head feels easier to hold up, and their shoulders relax without conscious effort. Pain decreases not because the neck was directly treated, but because it no longer has to work overtime. It's important to understand that this isn't about rigid posture or constant muscle engagement. True support is dynamic. The upper back and core should engage when needed and relax when not. This dynamic support allows the neck to do its job without strain. Neck pain caused by weak or underactive supporting muscles isn't a sign of damage. It's a sign of imbalance. When balance is restored, the neck stops compensating, and pain begins to fade naturally as the body returns to a more efficient way of functioning. One of the biggest reasons neck and shoulder pain becomes a long-term problem is because most approaches focus on temporary relief while leaving the underlying patterns untouched. When pain shows up, the natural instinct is to get rid of it as quickly as possible. That leads people towards solutions that reduce symptoms in the moment rather than change what caused the symptoms to appear in the first place. These methods aren't useless, but they are incomplete, and that's why the pain so often comes back. Temporary relief works by calming irritated tissues or dulling pain signals. Heat relaxes muscles, ice numbs sensation, massage increases blood flow, and painkillers block discomfort. All of these can be helpful, especially during flare-ups. The problem is that once their effect fades, the body returns to the same movement habits, stress responses, and tension patterns that created the pain. Nothing in the system has actually changed. This creates a frustrating cycle. Pain appears, relief is applied, pain decreases, life resumes as usual, and then the pain returns. Over time, this cycle trains people to expect pain as a recurring part of life. It also trains the body to rely on external fixes rather than internal balance. The real issue isn't that the pain is stubborn. It's that the conditions that produced it never stopped existing. Another reason temporary methods fail is that they often target the painful area directly, even when that area is only reacting to problems elsewhere. If the neck is tight because it's compensating for poor breathing, weak upper back muscles, or chronic stress, massaging the neck doesn't remove the compensation. It simply gives the neck a short break before it has to resume the same workload. Stretching can fall into this trap as well. Stretching a muscle that feels tight seems logical, but tightness doesn't always mean the muscle is short. Often it means the muscle is tired and overactive. Stretching an already overworked muscle can feel relieving in the moment, but it doesn't reduce the demand placed on it. Once normal activity resumes, the muscle tightens again to meet that demand. Painkillers and anti-inflammatory medications are another example. They reduce the perception of pain, which can be useful for functioning day to day. But pain is a signal. When that signal is silenced without addressing its cause, the body has no reason to change. The underlying tension, imbalance, or stress remains, quietly continuing its work. Temporary solutions also tend to ignore the role of habits. Pain is rarely created by one event. It's usually the result of patterns repeated over time. How you sit, how you breathe, how you move, how you respond to stress, and how often you change positions all shape muscle behavior. Using a quick fix for a few minutes a day cannot undo habits that operate for hours. This mismatch between duration and impact is crucial. A 10-minute massage cannot counteract 8 hours of tension and stillness. A brief stretch cannot balance a full day of shallow breathing. The body responds to what it experiences most consistently, not what feels best for a moment. There is also a psychological aspect to temporary relief. When relief is short-lived, people start to chase it. They stretch more aggressively, seek more treatments, or increase reliance on pain relief tools. This can increase frustration and hyperfocus on the painful area. The nervous system becomes more alert to sensations, making pain feel more intense and more persistent. Lasting change requires changing the inputs the body receives throughout the day. This includes how often you move, how you breathe, how you manage stress, and how different muscle groups share responsibility. When these inputs change, the body adapts. Muscle tone normalizes, circulation improves, and pain signals reduce naturally. This doesn't mean temporary relief methods should be abandoned. They can be valuable tools when used appropriately. The key is understanding their role. They are supportive, not curative. They create space for the body to recover, but they don't create recovery on their own. When people shift their focus from chasing relief to changing patterns, something important happens. Pain becomes less mysterious and less frightening. Instead of asking why the pain keeps coming back, they begin asking what in their daily life is reinforcing it. That shift in perspective is often the turning point where real progress begins. Neck and shoulder pain doesn't persist because the body is broken or resistant. It persists because the same signals keep being sent. When those signals change, the body responds accordingly, and relief stops being temporary and starts becoming part of a new normal. Awareness, relaxed breathing, and gentle frequent movement sound almost too simple to matter, especially when someone has been dealing with neck and shoulder pain for a long time. Many people expect relief to come from something intense, technical, or forceful. But the body doesn't heal through force. It heals through changed signals. These three elements work because they change the signals the body receives all day long, not just for a few minutes at a time. Awareness is the starting point, because nothing can change if it stays unconscious. Most neck and shoulder tension happens automatically. Shoulders slowly creep upward. The jaw tightens. The head subtly pushes forward. Breathing becomes shallow. None of this is a decision. It's a habit. When a habit runs in the background, the body treats it as normal, even when it's causing pain. The moment you notice tension, something shifts. That moment creates a pause between stimulus and response. You realize your shoulders are raised, your breath is held, or your neck is stiff. That realization alone often causes a small release. Muscles don't just tighten because they are weak or damaged. They tighten because the nervous system tells them to. Awareness interrupts that instruction. This doesn't mean constantly checking your posture or body position in a rigid way. That can actually increase tension. Awareness is gentle and curious. It's noticing without judgment. When you notice your shoulders are up, you let them drop. When you notice you're holding your breath, you let it flow. These small moments repeated throughout the day slowly reset what feels normal to your body. Relaxed breathing builds on this awareness. Breathing is one of the fastest ways to influence the nervous system. When breathing is slow, deep, and easy, the body receives a message that it is safe. When the body feels safe, it doesn't need to brace. Muscle tone decreases naturally. This is not something you force. It's something you allow. Many people breathe shallowly without realizing it. When they start paying attention, they discover how often they hold their breath or breathe high into the chest. Gently encouraging the breath to move lower, into the belly and rib cage, reduces the workload on the neck and shoulders. Those muscles are no longer needed to assist with every breath. Relaxed breathing also helps with consistency. You breathe thousands of times a day. Even small improvements in breathing pattern add up quickly. Unlike stretching or exercise, breathing doesn't require extra time or equipment. It happens while you sit, walk, work, or rest. That makes it one of the most powerful tools for reducing ongoing tension. Gentle, frequent movement completes the picture. The body was never meant to stay still for long periods. Muscles and joints thrive on regular motion. When movement is gentle and frequent, it restores circulation, lubricates joints, and reminds the nervous system that the body is flexible and capable. This doesn't mean intense workouts or aggressive stretching. In fact, too much intensity can increase tension. Gentle movements like turning the head, rolling the shoulders, opening the chest, or shifting posture are often more effective because they don't trigger protective responses. They invite movement rather than force it. Frequent movement prevents tension from building in the first place. Instead of waiting until the neck feels stiff and painful, movement keeps tissues from reaching that point. It's much easier for the body to stay relaxed than to recover from deep stiffness. These three elements work together. Awareness helps you notice tension. Breathing helps release it. Movement helps prevent it from returning. None of them require perfection. They require repetition. The body responds to what happens most often, not what happens most intensely. This approach also changes how people relate to pain. Instead of seeing pain as an enemy to fight, it becomes information. Tightness becomes a reminder to breathe. Stiffness becomes a cue to move. Pain becomes feedback rather than a threat. This shift alone can reduce pain intensity because fear and frustration amplify physical discomfort. Another important aspect is sustainability. Many pain relief methods fail because they are hard to maintain. Awareness, breathing, and gentle movement fit naturally into daily life. They don't require special settings or long sessions. This makes them far more likely to become habits rather than chores. Over time, the body learns a new baseline. Shoulders rest lower. Breathing becomes deeper without effort. Movement feels easier. The neck no longer needs to brace constantly. Pain reduces not in dramatic jumps, but in quiet, steady improvements. This doesn't mean pain will disappear overnight. Patterns that took years to develop take time to change. But progress becomes noticeable. Flare-ups become less intense and less frequent. Recovery happens faster. The body feels more resilient. Neck and shoulder pain often persists because the body is stuck in patterns of tension, shallow breathing, and stillness. Awareness, relaxed breathing, and gentle frequent movement change those patterns at their source. When the source changes, the outcome changes too, and relief becomes something that grows naturally rather than something that has to be chased. Neck and shoulder pain is often misunderstood as a sign that the body is failing, breaking down, or betraying you in some way. When pain lingers, it's easy to feel frustrated or even angry at your body, as if it's working against you. But pain is not an act of rebellion. It is communication. It is one of the most honest ways your body speaks to you, especially when something in your daily patterns, habits, or internal state needs attention. The body doesn't use words. It uses sensation. Tightness, stiffness, discomfort, and pain are signals designed to get your awareness. When everything is working smoothly, the body stays quiet. When something is off, it speaks up. Neck and shoulder pain is not random. It shows up where the body is under the most strain or where compensation is happening. That doesn't mean those areas are damaged. It means they are responding. Pain becomes a problem when it's seen only as an enemy to eliminate. In that mindset, the goal is to silence it as quickly as possible. Painkillers, quick fixes, and distractions become the solution. While these can reduce discomfort temporarily, they also block the message. When the message is blocked, the body has no reason to change its behavior. The same patterns continue, and the pain returns, often stronger or more persistent. When pain is viewed as communication, the approach changes. Instead of asking how to get rid of the pain, the question becomes what the pain is responding to. Neck and shoulder pain often responds to prolonged tension, stress, shallow breathing, lack of movement, or imbalance in how the body shares workload. The pain is pointing toward those issues, not accusing you of being broken. This perspective removes blame. Pain is not a punishment for poor posture or a lack of discipline. It's feedback. The body adapts constantly to keep you functioning. When something isn't working efficiently, the body finds a workaround. The neck and shoulders often become that workaround because they are adaptable and responsive. Pain is the cost of that adaptation. Ignoring pain doesn't make it go away long term. It makes it louder. The body increases the signal when it isn't being heard. What starts as mild stiffness turns into persistent discomfort, then into pain that demands attention. This escalation is not cruelty. It's persistence. The body keeps asking until the message is acknowledged. Listening to pain doesn't mean giving in to it or letting it control your life. It means observing it with curiosity instead of fear. Where does it show up? When does it worsen? What makes it ease, even slightly? These questions reveal patterns. Patterns reveal causes. Causes can be changed. This shift also reduces fear, which is a major amplifier of pain. When pain is seen as damage, it creates anxiety. Anxiety increases muscle tension and nervous system sensitivity, which increases pain. When pain is seen as information, fear decreases. The nervous system calms. Muscles relax more easily. Pain often reduces simply because the threat response fades. Understanding pain as communication also restores trust in the body. Instead of fighting against it, you start working with it. You notice tension earlier. You adjust breathing. You move more frequently. You respond to discomfort before it turns into pain. The body learns that it doesn't need to shout to be heard. This approach empowers rather than overwhelms. Pain is no longer something mysterious or unpredictable. It becomes something you can influence. Small changes begin to matter. A few deep breaths reduce tension. Gentle movement eases stiffness. Awareness prevents buildup. These responses teach the body that its message has been received. Over time, the body stops needing to send the same signal. When the underlying issue is addressed, the pain signal fades naturally. Not because it was forced away, but because it no longer serves a purpose. Communication stops when understanding is reached. Neck and shoulder pain is often the body's way of saying slow down, breathe, move differently, or share the load more evenly. It's not a flaw. It's intelligence. When you listen instead of resist, the relationship with your body changes. Pain becomes guidance instead of an obstacle, and that shift opens the door to relief that feels supportive rather than temporary.